You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
All right. Making sure everything's coordinated here. What's up, Coaches Nation? Another amazing week for our podcast. I see a delay in what I'm saying and what I'm seeing on Zoom. So I hope that you guys are hearing this and it's coming through okay. We are here today with, so I'm Dr. Sheri Fluellen, here with our co-host, Faisal Ensaun. And we have a really, really important conversation that we're going to have with you today. We're going to have it with each other, but you guys get to be here to witness it, to experience it, to think about ways which you can contribute to the conversation. We would love feedback. We would love comments, any way that you can interact with us and, give us your perspective on these topics. We welcome that. So before we jump into the super important topic that is really one of the most foundational aspects of coaching, if you really want to be a coach that can help with transformational change. First, before we jump into that, Faisal, I would love to hear about some wins that you have had this week, because I know it's a big week for you.
Yes, it's a couple of, a big week for Canadians in Ontario. Too. But generally speaking, as I was sharing before, our mandates are pretty much done, at least at a provincial level. So we have lots of big plans doing, we actually might go tomorrow to this big musical thing, and none of us will be required to do anything other than just to show up. And also tomorrow, I'm speaking at my biggest event yet, and not just speaking. I'm doing a coaching session, so it's a interactive group coaching session, and I'm going to be walking them through. And I don't know how many people will show up, so it's a little bit nervous around that, but also I'm really excited because it's a 3-day event, and this is the first time I've done like this session in a 3-day event.
That's awesome. What are you most nervous about?
I think it's the part around, because what will change is the facilitation. I've done this in small groups, but as soon as I find out how many people are showing up, I have to quickly change my facilitation style, because I have to go from more coaching to coaching the whole audience and getting them involved in the chat and getting them to interact more there. And I can still do hot seat coaching, but it will change the dynamic of how I do the coaching and everything. A lot of it will be similar, but that part will change dramatically based on how many people are there. And more than likely, it will be a bigger group than what I've had, but I don't know how they're going to receive it because I've never done this session in a bigger crowd. So we'll see. But I'm confident I think it'll be good.
Yeah, true to high performance principles, which we as high performance coaches live by. You are stepping out in courage, because you've not done this thing before. It's in front of a lot of people. You could fall flat on your face, literally and figuratively. You could do your best coaching and people are like, what was that?
Yeah.
But
thanks for planting that idea. I wasn't thinking that. But no, you're right. You're right.
You have confidence in yourself and you're like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I don't know exactly how many people are going to be there, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to be in the moment. I'm going to give it my best, be present, give it my all. Right?
Yeah. And I, one thing I've learned as in this, the coaching world, but more specifically the influencer entrepreneur world, is that most of what we're going to do, we're not going to know unless you just go there and show up. And half the battle is actually showing up. And then the other half is trying to figure out how you're going to handle that. And for the most part, whenever I've had to these things, at least based on what I've done at the past few years, you figure out a way. No matter how many times you screw up, you figure out a way to get back up. And it's not, most things are not recoverable. And
Yeah.
that takes a little bit of kind of putting yourself in there a few times to know that, oh, I'll be okay. It'll be nerve-wracking, but I'll be
Did
okay.
you just say that most things are not recoverable, or did you mean most things are recoverable?
Are recoverable.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll blame that on English being my fourth language.
Well, English is my first and only language. I am really lame. And so I think the fact that you know 4 languages is incredible.
Thank you. And it does, sometimes I do have to translate some things even now after 20 years of being in this world.
Well, I think that's one of, oh my goodness, cough, and all of a sudden my voice changes. I think that's one of the things that probably helps you be incredibly nimble, is that you're able to do these, quick translations and take things from one thing to another in the moment, in real time. I think that's incredible. And actually, I think really ties into our topic today, which we'll get to in a minute. But I'm going to continue the theme, because what I heard you say in your win actually ties into what we were planning on talking about today. So I'm going to keep that theme going, and and I'm gonna put a nice little neat bow on it here in a moment. So my win, as I was listening to you, I would say, is I spent the weekend at a real estate training, and I was super duper out of my comfort zone. I mean, I was in a room of investors who are far beyond me, and who have raised collectively billions of dollars for real estate syndications and deals. And that's something that I'm moving into that space. And so I'm there soaking up the information, but I know that when I get in those moments, I can easily get in my mind and think, who am I? Like, I'm nobody. I've not done even remotely, what they've done. And I start feeling this little small feeling that when I listen to it, keeps me from interacting. It keeps me from being open and kind of trying to create a relationship to where I can get more value and I can potentially offer them value. And so the weekend was great, because I refused to listen to those feelings of inadequacy. There was one night where it really cropped up. I admit, I went back to my room. I cried a little bit. I'm like, what am I doing? But I'm like, okay, I had to talk myself out of that and just continued on. And I had some amazing conversations and connected with folks on a way that I then had some conversations the next day after the thing. You know how you're in the moment and there's that hype and everybody's all engaged and everybody's talking, but then you go home after the event and you kind of lose your steam a little bit, maybe, and then people that said they were going to reach out or whatever, they don't, and it's just kind of everybody goes back to their regular life and you kind of lose that. So I was working hard at not losing that. And yesterday and the day before, I actually had some people reach out to me that I met. And I know that they reached out to me because I was successful in connecting with them. Not that I'm amazing investor like them yet, but because I had some genuine conversation. We laughed over some really silly stuff over drinks and just were able to connect as human beings. And I literally see that made all of the difference. And so that was my win. That's my long-winded win. And it was really about, despite the fact that there may have been different levels of experience and progression, we're all humans, and we were able to connect on a genuine human way. And that has made a significant impact. Now, the reason I say it like that is because one of the things that we were kind of planning on talking about today with Faisal is what is the most foundational thing as a coach that we do that really sets a stage for change. And that is relationship. It's being present. It's building trust and being known and knowing your client. So that's how that all ties in, because what you talked about a little bit earlier, Faisal, with your win, really was about being present, about connecting with your with these folks, whoever shows up, however many of them they may be, whole sea of faces. It's about genuinely connecting and being present and being able to have that emotional connection.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I was just gonna say, you said I'm not an amazing investor like these people. You forget the investor part. I'm sure you're amazing in that part too. You're amazing, period. That's the part to remember.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And that's how you showed up, and that's why you connected, because and what you said was really profound, because when you connect with people at a human level, we don't need common ground in terms of we should believe the same things, we have the same interests. That stuff is all secondary, tertiary, all stuff. We're human beings. We have the same emotions. We have the same needs. We have the same challenges. We have the same similar aspirations and visions and all sorts of stuff that we can connect with at such deep levels.
Yeah.
You don't need anything beyond that. And if you're open, vulnerable, and you're genuine and authentic there, most people crave that stuff, especially in the world that we live in. People crave that stuff because it's rare.
Yeah. One of the pieces of feedback that I got, there was this one guy in particular that I really connected with. He's doing what I would love to do, if I fast forward 2 to 5 years, like he's doing what I would love to be doing. His lifestyle is the way that I envision my lifestyle being. His values are very similar to mine. Just huge amount of respect for him. And so I was hoping I didn't come across like a stalker, but I would follow him around, not like a, puppy dog, but like, between sessions, at dinner, all those different things. I would kind of just sit down at the table he was at and listen to him and ask questions. And there was one conversation that we had that was going very technical in investing. And I was, because I want to be where he's at, I was listening very intently and asking very specific questions so I could better understand what he was saying. So that I then had a conversation with him the next day after the event on the phone. And the feedback he gave me is like, you were so tuned in, so intently listening, asking really specific questions that led him to know that I was really listening. And he's like, I talk to a lot of people all the time and help give them advice or whatever. And he's like, there's a point at which if I keep on talking, it's not going to make any more impact, because they're like, their brain has been blown. They just can't kind of hang or follow. And so that again reminded me of like that astute, intense listening and asking really good questions. Like that's what we do as coaches, right? Like that's our superpower at the very basic. One of our superpowers is being really good at listening and asking really specific and powerful questions. So that was just affirmation for me. I'm like, yeah. So also let me just point out that's a great way in which we can use our skills as a coach in a way that is in a non-coaching situation. I certainly was not coaching him. In fact, you could kind of say he was doing the opposite, but there's still this fundamental relationship building connection, a skill set that we develop that is powerful no matter the scenario, no matter the situation. So I'm super excited at just really unpacking this even more. Because this is what we do, like, right? Fundamentally, this is what we do. So Faisal, where do you want to take this conversation?
Do we want to talk about the sponsor?
Absolutely. Awesome. We're taking this conversation because I forgot. So our sponsor for this podcast is the Coaching Mastery Community. It's a virtual community that's designed and catered specifically for coaches by coaches. And the whole point of the community is to help facilitate peer-to-peer relationships that can help you grow as a coach, providing support, encouragement, mentorship, education, your own coaching, because you get to be coached, as well as coach other coaches, which gives you such powerful feedback to help you really level up your coaching. So it really focuses on business mastery and coaching mastery and all the things in between. What would you like to add to that?
I think the biggest factor in there is that the community piece is that you are around people who are doing similar things. And I mean, the main reason you went to that event was because you were connected to people who are doing similar things and you're moving forward in a direction.
Absolutely.
Potentially, but within our coaching community is that I'm consistently having conversations with members. I have my evergreen model. I've been reached out to pretty much half the members in the community. Hey, how are you doing this? And I showed them behind the scenes and all that stuff. I would have wanted that when I started out because I had no idea what it would look like when my business grows. I had no conception of what it would be. I had just seen people who were at 8-figure or whatever figure number and they had their big businesses, but I couldn't even conceive that and I didn't know what was happening behind the doors. So I needed people who were around where I was. I needed to know better examples of how to go forward and learn from them and also share perspective and learn from each other moving forward. And I think that's a huge part of the coaching mastery community is that you need to be around those people for you to consistently grow. Not to mention the fact that most people around you will not understand what you're doing.
Right.
So you need people from a human perspective to feel like you belong, you're going on the right path. Otherwise, you're going to be constantly doubting what you're doing, and most people will have no idea to support you.
Yeah, it's super powerful. Well said, Faisal.
Thank you.
All right, human relationships, connecting with your clients in a way they feel heard, understood, supported, encouraged, pushed, pulled, all of the above. What have you noticed as you have, because you've been a coach for quite a few years now, and you have really started to hit your stride in your ability to impact. I mean, I remember you said, Faisal, a few days ago, and I don't remember when it was, but you made the comment, you're like, the amount of time it used to take me to help a client change might have been like 2 months. And now it's like 2 days. Like, just that as you've gotten better at your skill set and in connecting and doing all these things, you've realized that there's been a progression in your ability to help people change in the way they're looking for. And I would love to hear how that connection with your client and that relationship has contributed to your ability to become so much more powerful and effective.
So I think in relation to that, I realized that from reading a book on coaching. I definitely recommend that. It's called the business. There's one version of it is the Book of Coaching by Ajit Nawalka, but then he wrote another one. I think it's only in PDF version. You have to buy from his website. It's called the Business Book of Coaching, which was really good. He mentioned that a couple of years ago. I read it. He's like, at some point, time is not the biggest factor in coaching, because as you're starting out, you're experimenting with so many things and you're learning so many ways of coaching, and you're trying to understand how there's so many variables in there. But as you coach more and more and more, you understand what you need to cut through to focus on the thing that will actually make the difference. And a lot of coaching becomes that as you get more focused on listening to those patterns, you get more focused on what this client is actually not saying, and you go directly towards that. It cuts through a lot of that, the conversations that doesn't need to be had, to be honest. And that's what makes a difference. But even before that, one of the biggest lessons I've learned, and it's not just in coaching, and it's what you brought up, is in human relationships, is that how do we connect with people, human beings, at a deeper level? And I did a training in my community around that on collaboration. How do you collaborate? We did that in our mastermind as well within CMC. So one of the members had a conversation around that. How do we collaborate with other people? How do we approach other people? And the normal way we're taught is complete garbage. Like, I've heard this enough time in the real estate world and networking world and so this is the normal theme that it goes. You go to networking, you pick out the people that are great, you talk to them, you find out their strengths and weaknesses, you share your superpowers and your weaknesses, and then you find out how you can work with each other. Like, what is that? like if you boil people down to strengths and weaknesses, you've lost sight of what a human being is, because most people don't even understand know what their strengths and weaknesses are yet. Most people are not actually deeply connected to who they are. So judging people based on what they're aware of or not aware of in that moment and connecting with that part of them, that is at best, that'll give you a quick opportunity. And in a few months or a few days down the road, you're like, why the hell did I connect with this person? And that tends to happen a lot. Like people get together for all sorts of things, coaches, real estate investors, people that I connect with, they do deals together. And after just a few weeks, they find out, like, I don't want to work with this guy.
Yeah.
I want to go to what Tony Robbins, he said this in his event. He's like, he was talking about intimate relationships. He's like, this is what happens in intimate relationships, right? You start talking to somebody, you find out what their values are, you find out what their vision is and what they're working on, and then you slowly get to understand and work together and see, hey, I can live with this person. And then he laughs. He's like, that is not what happens. And everybody laughs because everybody knows, no, you get drunk and you get together and have sex, and then 6 months later you're like, why the hell am I sitting with this person? Whether that's getting drunk or getting drunk in love, however you want to describe it, we don't take the time to get to know the human being behind the facade of whatever's showing up in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think whether we're talking about your personal relationships, your people you're going to potentially meet for whatever collaborative, or your clients, I think the most important thing, and even from a spiritual perspective, if you talk to spiritual teachers, they will say this, that if you can't see the person behind their roles, behind their their masks, behind their group identity, behind all that stuff, if you can't see the human being, you can't help that person.
Mm.
Period.
So let's go back to that example, Faisal, that you used about going to a networking event and, making your little mental checklist of pros and cons or strengths and weaknesses, and you're trying to puzzle piece yourself in. What would the alternative be? How would you explain what you just said in a very practical, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I can definitely share that. In fact, I'll give you an example from an event. So I was at an event, and there was this, he was a very well-known investor and very big, and so pretty much everybody knew him in that event. And I was there too, and I was just standing there, and I was just watching the whole time how people were approaching him. And before people were approaching, this guy is so good at figuring people out, because he's had to sift through quickly. He's had to learn, just like women have to learn to get rid of guys quickly. He's had to learn how to get rid of people who are just after the business. So you could see somebody approaching him. He could tell from their body language what this person wants. Like he ignored most people for the most part. So at some point, I just watched this. It was very weird, and I went and introduced myself to him, and we talked a little bit. We started talking about, like, I shared a little bit about why I'm here and what am I excited about, and all that stuff. And he shared a little bit more, and I just listened, just like you talked about it. I was very curious to know. I'm like, so what? And I knew that he was a big name. I'm like, tell me more about your life. Like, what are you working on and all that stuff. Nobody was interested in that. They wanted to talk about what their strengths were. They wanted to talk about, what could they do for him and all that stuff. He wasn't interested in that. And somehow we ended up talking about his son, who was dealing with a very difficult situation. He had this, I don't specifically remember, but he had a challenge around fitting in socially. So he had some kind of psychological challenge around that, but he was doing his best to help him. In fact, he had invited his son. And I told him I'd love to meet him. And then later on, he came around too. But as I was talking to him about that, he started asking me questions because he saw I was interested. And we talked about the deeper psychological challenges of like being a parent and thing. You could see him, and then he's starting to open up emotionally. I was opening up too. And before I knew it, we were very connected, and I met his son, and there was something I told him that he hadn't thought about. Because what he was focusing on is like, he was trying to bring him to situations so he can get out of his comfort zone and maybe connect with some people. But he had this doubt. He had this thing that maybe he had this thing that he's like, he didn't believe that he was going to connect with anybody. He was going to do anything important, even though he was pretty smart. But socially, he had a lot of challenges. But when I met his son, I'm like, your son is pretty unique, right? He might have some challenges now, but all he needs to do is get around the right people. And as soon as I said that, he just a light bulb went off. He's like, holy shoot, I've been judging him more than anybody else.
Wow.
We all do it to the closest people around us. And so here's the result. A few weeks later, he sent me a couple of referrals, after the event, and then he had a conversation with me to collaborate. This was around the beginning of pandemic too. He wanted to collaborate with me on something, and we're still in conversation. It hasn't, but he remembers me. Yeah. He remembers to. I didn't need to do much other than just talk to him as a human being, and there are a few key areas that happen there. One is curiosity is probably one of the most primary things. You need to know more about a human being beyond what they do. If you're not curious about the human being beyond their business titles, whatever they could do for you, you've lost a person at that point. And then the next moment is that you're authentically sharing. You're not just sharing who you want to appear in front of them, but sharing yourself as a human being as well. And there's this, Brandon Burchard always shares this around coaching. He's like, when you're going into a session, you engage your client's emotion, or you die trying. Literally. And when he said it to this day, and he said it like 5 years ago to this day, I remember, I'm like, that's completely true. So, and a lot of things come into it. There's curiosity, there's vulnerability, there's openness, being non-judgmental, in the sense that your mind will create all sorts of judgments and put people in all sorts of categories. But we have the ability, when you get better at this, you can put pauses on those judgments, on those labels, and you can get curious and start to find out more and more and more. As you do that, people tend to open up, and psychologists, coaches, anybody who's in this world of trying to understand people, social workers, they know that most people don't share beyond surface. Yeah. But the things that are beyond surface, the deeper parts of people, they're incredibly amazing. They have these weird thoughts and weird ideas that they never share. They don't even acknowledge it themselves. But as soon as they start doing that, there's a different part of them that's incredibly excited to show up. And if you connect with them, and Richard Levin calls that their hidden dreams, that's it. You're their biggest supporter. You're their biggest comrade in life. And I have clients right now, it's like, nobody else knows these things in my life, not even their wife. I'm like, I know.
I love that, the hidden dreams. There is something so incredibly powerful when we get to the place where we're willing to share something, either that we've kept hidden because we have been fearful of sharing our dream, and fearful of being ridiculed, of being put down, of being told you shouldn't do that, or somehow being judged. But also sometimes that hidden dream is so hidden, as you alluded to, that we're not actually even aware that we have that dream. Yeah. And so imagine how powerful that is. If you think back to those that are listening, has there been an opportunity where you've helped ask questions so intently of your client or of a friend or whatever, where they actually uncovered a dream that they had, but they didn't realize they had it, but they were able to actually put words and a picture around it? Like, that's life-changing when somebody can realize, oh my gosh, this is really what I want. And you were able to be part of that instrument, the tool that led them to that discovery. And they wouldn't have gotten there likely if there wasn't a sense of safety based on the relationship of being curious and authentic and genuine and open to whatever their experiences and ideas are. I love that.
Yeah, and it's and this is why one of the reasons tomorrow when I'm that event that I'm doing, I'm helping. I go towards vision primarily almost every time when I'm getting to know. I want to understand what their vision is for their life. I want to understand what's true to them, what is close to their heart versus whatever they think they should do because of society, culture, or family, or whatever else expectations they might have. And one of the more powerful things that I've seen is that if you can get people to go within their own mind and heart and see something that they, first of all, they don't even know how to do that half because they've forgotten that part, even though it's one of the most important functions of the human mind is to dream, is to be creative. Kids do that all the time. Oh. But when you walk them through that, and they see it almost always in these sessions, when I walk them through a visualization, you watch, even if they don't say anything, you could tell they're shaken up to some degree. They're like, what just happened? Because even though they will talk about, oh, I have these dreams, I have this thing, they've never felt it. They've never felt it. It's a very mental thing that, oh, if I get it, it'll be really good. It's somewhere in the distant future. Yeah. So when you find out more about a person, who they want to become, how they ideally want to see the world, what kind of world they want to live in, how do they ideally want to be as human beings, what do they want to create, how do they want to experience life, and they feel it, whether they're sharing it or seeing it in their mind, that changes people. Yeah. That will stay with them, even if they don't act. That connects them with a part of them that has always been there, and they've just lost sight of it. So yeah, that's but it all goes back to is that if a coach can't be open enough, curious enough, can't put a pause on labels and judgments, can't be vulnerable, can't connect at a human level, none of that stuff matters, because they won't be open enough to share. So when we talk about coaching, a lot of coaches talk about, well, coaching is about challenging. Well, how can you challenge if they're not open to the challenge, if you don't have enough content from their life to challenge them? Yeah. And a lot of times coaches hear this phrase and they will think that, oh, maybe they're not thinking clearly about this, or I'm not asking the right questions. So for example, you'd be in a session, you would ask, hey, what do you think? What do you think you should do about this, or what do you want to do about this idea? It's like, well, I don't know. They will say, I don't know. Or I can't think of it right now. Maybe I should spend some time thinking of it later. You can tell they're not open. If you hear these phrases, you watch their body language, they're closed off. You're not doing your job. You're not. And that happens to me all the time. And those are the moments I know I need to open up myself, or I need to do something else. Otherwise the session is going towards, I don't know, and all sorts of things. It's not going to move the session forward.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really, really great point. And sometimes that I don't know is, I'm just thinking about the times in my life, even when I've been coached and I'm like, I don't know, I say that, I have said that in the past in certain situations out of a sense of feeling stuck, out of a sense of hopelessness, or that I've tried things that haven't worked and I don't know, and I think I say I don't know because there's a sense of judgment present, my own judgment about, well, I've tried things and they failed, so apparently I'm not good enough to come up with but also then I likely would subscribe my own judgment that, well, my coach is going to judge me too, and not at all based on necessarily the coach's experience with me, but because it starts with me first. And so a good coach then, as you're saying, would see past that, would challenge, but do so in a way that provides non-judgmental, curiosity and, and a safety and being able to be vulnerable and share what didn't work and what could work, but maybe it wouldn't, so yeah, there's this delicate balance of really pushing people are not, and when I say pushing, I'm thinking about not accepting their first, second, or fourth answer as the final answer, that there's an opportunity to go deeper, to give more reflection, to just shoot from the hip, which in psychological terms, there's a really old way of talking about it I've called free association, where you just say what comes to mind, even if it doesn't seem to make sense. It just, you're kind of just getting that flow of consciousness going, because at some point, when you stop judging what you're going to say, the right things or the useful, helpful things can kind of emerge on their own.
Yeah, and you actually bring up a really profound point in there, is that most people are their biggest critics and judges. But more accurately, which book was it? At this point, it slips me, but the writer called that part of us the judge.
Yeah.
There is a part of us that judges you constantly. It's not you. There's a part of you, no matter what you do, you're never good enough. You're gonna screw up. It's gonna be messed up. So you don't even trust your own thoughts a lot of times when it comes to difficult circumstances around your, like, think about the things that we have to deal with. Like, we make some decisions that we have no idea what the hell the outcome will be around our kids, and around our life, around our career, around our future, moving to a different place, transitioning out of, like, these are difficult decisions. And what makes it much worse is that we don't even feel safe enough with our own thoughts to a lot of times to say that, hey, I'll do that. So and because we don't feel safe, there's no vulnerability.
Yeah. Because
you're already scared, but you can't acknowledge the scared because something inside of you, first of all, is going to judge you. Mm-hmm. And that's why I go with the assumption is that this person it's a safe assumption to go into a session to say is that this person is incredibly judgmental towards themselves. So what would remove that judgment is that I need to work 10 times harder to put a pause on that judgment that I have. Because if they get that psychological safety from me, and that's what we're doing as coaches, we're first creating a safe space. By safe space, I mean, without psychological safety, you can throw away these coaching, psychology, and all these things out the window because nobody will share. So that psychological safety, as we're creating, it starts with your energy, and it's not just. And this is the part that was confusing the hell out of me when I was starting out, because my mind has judgments. As soon as I see somebody, I see you have blonde hair, you're Caucasian, this and that. My mind will say that stuff because this is how the mind understands things. But I used to think that, oh, that's me. No, that's just the mind categorizes these things to better understand. We put people in categories and blocks so we can make sense of things. Yes. That doesn't mean you have to follow through with that. So that's what I mean by pausing it. Okay, that's there. But then there's another level. I want to know more. I want to understand the human being behind these surface. So you're never taking what's at the cover, the group identities, their circumstances, their challenges as the determinant factor of who the human being is. Even their thought processes could be completely negative. That's not who they are. So going past that requires a level of curiosity and openness with yourself and them. That's the area that I work hardest on than other parts of the coaching, because if I can establish that, then they feel open enough, just like you said, free form sharing. When that happens, then you can go deeper. Yeah. And you can go deeper, then that's where challenges, that's where helping them understand themselves is. That's where helping them see that the thoughts that they have, they're not helpful. The emotions that they're getting, they're not helpful. How are they going to deal with it? But until that happens, there's a block. You will see consistent blocks. And I've listened to enough sessions from other coaches and myself to know that. And I've seen this, like, literally. And I remember this one incident. I listened to this coach's whole session. I knew the exact moment. She didn't say anything. It was nothing. It was completely in the tonality. I knew she was judging this client. And I knew that because of the way it wasn't the question. It was just the way her tonality went. And if I knew that, definitely the client picked that up. She might have not been able to verbalize it or say it, but something felt off. And safety gone, and you put your walls up, and that's it. That session went nowhere. And she was like, what happened? And that client ended up actually leaving her. But the conversation that I had with this coach, I'm like, you can't coach with that if you can't put a pause on your judgments. You literally cannot coach anybody. It won't work. And I got her to watch that session. She saw it. She's like, oh shit. I thought of her as a woo-woo person. Now think about it. She thought of her client as this person who lives in this mythical world, and she's not practical. And this coach was very practical. So she had a judgment for herself and the client. So why would the client open up to a coach like that or at that level? She can't, because she's probably judging herself, because more than likely if she appears woo-woo to the coach, she appears woo-woo to everybody else. So she's constantly trying to prove to others that she's normal, and then others are judging, but she's judging herself even more harshly. It's like, maybe I'm screwed up to begin with, even though she might put up the facade that she's doing everything right.
So I think what you bring up is super fascinating and interesting. And as I was just imagining a session where all of a sudden, as a coach, if I notice that my client has shut down, is stopped, is just kind of giving the I don't know and not really engaging, I think a great question to ask myself is, have I done or said something that implies that I'm judging them, or that may come across as judgmental? Or, and it could be just that they have experienced people judging them so much that they have now entered a topic and territory where they automatically shut down because they're expecting a judgment. And what is the, I would say, I will ask you this, I kind of have my opinion, but what would you say is the antidote for a situation where somebody might be feeling judged?
So there are a few things. There's not one thing. I think it matters how you show up. Your intentionality matters in a session. So doing it. So a lot of times when coaches get trained, their thinking is a lot, well, I need to prepare for this session. I need to understand my framework. I need to ask the right questions. Like all the thoughts are around the mechanics of the session. I think the mechanics of the session is completely secondary. The primary thing is how you're showing up in the session, and what energy are you bringing in that session. So I spend more time getting ready with my energy normally in a day. I spend a lot of time doing processing my own emotions and all sorts of stuff. But before the session, even if I have 5 minutes, I would rather spend that time doing a meditation or moving my body and setting an intention than going through the notes. That will be much more helpful than going through material at a mental level. And then I definitely have reminders of how I want to show up, and I'm a human being. And so the biggest thing that makes a difference is the consciousness, awareness. If you're present, you're aware, you can catch a lot of things. You can catch your own judgments, you can catch yourself drifting off, your thoughts, all sorts of stuff, and you can recover quickly. And coaching is like a dance. You will make mistakes, you will fall off, but you have the ability, just like life, you will have multiple chances to recover in a session. But it all depends on what your intentions are and how aware you are. And if you lose awareness, what's a reminder for you that you're going to come back? For me, I have my words in front of you around my coaching. But if I go towards, for example, to a point where I'm sharing too much and it's not about the client anymore, and I'm giving advice or that doesn't work at that point, and I'm asking questions that have nothing to do with where the client is going. I make mistakes all the time around that. But what I remember is serve, energy, challenge, which means that, am I serving them? Are they my focus? What's going on with the energy, which is the emotions, body language, all that stuff. If something is off, I need to address that. Challenge. Am I actually challenging? Is the challenge working at all? So that keeps bringing me back. It's always in front of me. So that intention before and the readiness and within the session makes a difference, because we're all human beings. We're going to lose awareness at points. But what's cool is, so for example, a practical way of looking at this, let's say there is a point I'm listening to the client and I'm sensing that she's not being open or he's not being open. You can keep asking questions, keep probing, but it's not working. But what I would actually do, if I remember my intention around serve energy challenges, I would step back, I would stop the session. And I would literally say, hey, I'm sensing this thing that like I feel like you're closed off. I would literally say it like that. And I feel like we haven't gone deeper. I feel like we're staying at the surface. And I could be completely off. Am I reading that correctly? Or another strategy, which I do this much more often because I want to get better and better at this, is if I'm seeing that the client is not open, then I tend to stop the session. I'll share something quickly from my side that's more vulnerable. Mm-hmm. That'd be like, it could be a quick 1-minute story. Hey, you know what? This is what happens. And a lot of times when I share, the client's like, oh, that shifts. So that's why I have to be incredibly aware to see like what's happening in a session. If it's not free flowing, like you're saying, they're not freely expressing, there's very little point in the mechanics of how you're going to challenge, what kind of question you're going to ask and all that stuff for us to go deeper if that is not set up. So I'm consistently checking in. Are they open? Am I open? Am I aware? And then this is not like a thought process going on. It's just the background intention is there and I have reminders in front of me. So that's what helps me practically. There are other ways that we can do it too, but the point is bringing the awareness back to here. And the way you said it when you were with that person, when you were present with them, is that's what he sensed. What he sensed was that you were fully there, and people sense that. You can't fake that for long.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say? Ah, gotcha. See, that would be a clue that I was not paying attention. I'm like, yeah. Okay, wait, what did you say? That would mean I wasn't paying attention. All right, I just had to do that.
That was funny. By the way, I've been noticing your earring matches perfectly with the painting behind me.
It does. Look at that. It's like the river.
It does. It looks great.
I'm in Wyoming. I found this shirt the other day. It is the most Western thing I own. It's just crazy Western.
It's great. I love the color.
Very colorful, very, very Wyoming. I feel like I could go jump on a horse and wrangle some antelope.
Awesome. I'd like to see that.
So would I. That would be an incredible amount of vulnerability. Getting bucked off and all that good stuff. All right. Well, we are going to wrap this up. What is the kind of the lasting message, the lasting nugget that you would like people, our coaches here, to think about as they start to engage in their clients and in their other relationships they've got this week? What is the thing that they can keep at the forefront of their mind to make sure that they are connecting as on a deeper level?
Yeah, I think there are two things in there. One, I'll repeat, I love Richard Littman. One of the things that he says around coaching is that you can't take people deeper than you have gone yourself. So being a coach requires you to consistently work on your own challenges, your own biases, your own perceptions, your own, and your own life. Like if you're not consistently working on these things yourself, it will be very, very difficult. Coaching is not an intellectual journey. It's an experiential journey.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, then it's very hard for you to take people deeper. And you will notice that as you gain more awareness, you get better with your clients. It's like one-to-one correlation there. Even though you might have not gained more tools necessarily, it's just your awareness changes that. And the other side of that is intentionality. I think this is one of the most important parts of leadership, of anything you would do, is that if you're going to come in with awareness, even though you have your flaws as human beings, you're going to lose. that intentionality matters, and intentionality doesn't just start with, oh, I'm gonna show up with this intention. That's the beginning of it. But within that, you're consistently checking in. Am I still on track? Am I still on track? Am I still, or have I lost it? And if you look at it, coaching is like life scrunched into that 1 hour or 45 minutes or 90 minutes of a session. But that's how life is, but in a slower pace, is that you're showing up with awareness, you're consistently working on yourself, and you're checking in consistently. It's not that complicated, that part, but the actual practice of it is hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great words of wisdom, things for us to think about. It's kind of, when you said intentionality is not just setting your intention, but checking in on it. Immediately I'm like, oh, that's like a diet. I'm going to lose 10 pounds, or I'm going to gain 5 pounds of muscle, or whatever the goal is. It's like, my intention is to do that. But then I go about my day, never thinking about it again. That's not really, there's an intention set, but you're not really following through on maintaining that intention in real life. So how are you going to keep focus on that throughout real life, throughout the day, throughout the week? Is kind of a practical example of an idea of, setting an intention, but keeping your intention.
Yeah, no, for sure.
All right. So thank you guys so much for listening. We have enjoyed this conversation. I am sure that you've got a few nuggets out of Faisal and the things that he shared, and out of the things that we talked about regarding how to connect more with your clients, how to really build that relationship that embodies respect, non-judgmental attitudes. So, and vulnerability. And for the whole point of our jobs are to help people change, and change at the most fundamental level. And these are all really requirements in order for somebody to really be willing to tap into that most internal deep change that they're looking for. So let us know what part of this you loved the most, what nuggets you took out, what you're going to do differently, what you're going to focus on. We would love your feedback.
Yes. And make sure you like and share this with any coaches that you think will gain something from it. And we'd love to hear from you as well. And also, if you're a coach, you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, please reach out to us.
Absolutely. All right, guys, have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.